I have a question for you, and I think you might resonate with this. As a first generation American, I was actually born in Brooklyn, New York. Maybe a lot of people watching, feel that they would like New York represented here. I don't live in New York now. I live here in Atlanta, Georgia. Thank you for coming on down and for helping Georgia get on the right path and for
Yeah,
getting those
freaking A.
seats.
I got to say, New York's going to benefit so much for the fact that the Senate's now blue, because you literally had aid for cities and states stalled in the Senate, and then now it's unstalled. So,
Yeah.
yeah, freaking Georgia.
Yeah, indeed. Something that gets to me is my family immigrated to New York and saw it as the land of opportunity. My family comes from Panama, and my entire family is still up in New York. And I think about my friends and family up north all the time because New Yorkers are still facing these issues that happened to them even before the pandemic: vulnerability to homelessness, overcrowded schools. I don't live in New York now, but I did grow up there for a time. My parents moved me out of New York for a reason, and my younger siblings. I went to PS 139. Overcrowded schools were a problem then, they're a problem now. High poverty rates, unemployment, after school care. I feel that these might be like 4 or 5 of the biggest issues New Yorkers face and deal with. What would a Yang administration, with you at the forefront of being mayor of New York, how would you address these major issues? And could you have created a New York that my family would have been proud to raise me in?
Where did your family head, Roberto? Was it? It wasn't straight to Georgia, was it?
No, my family has lived all over the East Coast primarily because I'm the son of a soldier, of a veteran, of a Marine, the proud son of a Marine and a nurse. And so I've lived all over the East Coast with my siblings, and we visited New York every summer. But my parents also, even when my father was deployed, my mom was hesitant and reluctant to ever move us back to New York for any long period of time.
But you still have a lot of family here, I take it.
Almost all my family.
So does that mean that you have cousins and relatives that came of age in New York, and that do you get together and compare notes?
We do. We do. And unfortunately, at quite a few of the funerals, as a lot of those
Oh no.
people, aged up, and unfortunately, some things with the pandemic and so on and so forth. But yeah, we compare notes, and you know, there are a lot of issues in New York that have unfortunately created situations that people found themselves in, and that's why this matters to me.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing. I spoke to a group of Black activists on Friday night, and the way they characterized it is similar to the way you characterized it, which is that that there's no one thing you can do that actually alleviates the problem or changes the situation. That you'd have to do, let's call it 8 things at once, or something along those lines. And you can look at it. It's housing and the cost thereof, and the fact that a lot of people are in substandard housing that hasn't been repaired in years and years. And then it's education, which you're referring to, where you have overcrowded schools. And right now those schools are closed. So you have people who are already behind falling much further behind. I mean, they've already missed essentially a year. And then it's the access to opportunities that they would have and the role models they have in their community. And they're very forthright where they say, look, there's just not a lot of hope in a lot of these places. One thing I will say, and you actually represent this in some ways, Roberto, because you're like this very talented creator. When I was in Brownsville with a state assemblywoman named Latrice Walker last week, and I need to go back because you saw things that were very, very dark and bleak, and people who had given up, or didn't have the resources to be able to thrive at, or even get by in some cases. And then you had some activists who were doing incredible work in that community. Not even activists, like there was one person who had started a design center, and then was teaching students how to design, and then was farming them out as labor to various corporate clients. That there was another group. I'm actually gonna go back there because I spent so little time there, and I said, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen, where They tried to create like an urban farm, and they largely succeeded. Like when I show you the video of this, it's going to blow your mind. It blew my mind. And so like the thing I took from it was that it's not even necessarily for someone to show up and say like, hey, you know, like we're gonna dump this program or do this program or do that program. Like you have to find what's working in these communities and then augment it and pour resources on it and amplify it. Like we all know, I think that like I'm very much like a ground up or a people up person. Like you know, I think that if you get resources into people's hands, then problems tend to get better. And there are people doing heroic things in a lot of these communities that are really like that organization. I talked to them about their money, and I was like, hey, I was staggered at how much they got done with like not that much money. And then it was like, well, what would you need to like actually scale this to, you know, to change an additional 100 lives or something like that? And they told me, and I was like, that's not that much money. You know, like in the sense, I was like, I got to come back here and try to get you this money. So those are to me the opportunities. You do have to try and get the basics right, and New York City has not gotten the basics right for a lot of people. And then you have to try to amplify the things that are happening that are positive that can draw more people in, because a lot of it is about folks feeling like they have something to invest in for their own future, that they have some kind of path forward. And if they don't, then you know, they end up turning to gangs and other things that give them some form of structure. It is very, very tough, and you know, your family's lived it, Roberto. And the activists on Friday really helped me see that it is something where it's like you have to try and attack it from every angle. And I would even say some of the stuff you do probably is not going to work. But that would be fine, you know, like in the sense that, because what's going on right now is 100% not working. So, you know, if you're trying a number of things, like as long as some of them have an impact, you're going to improve something.
Well, thank you, Andrew, for always trying, and thank you for caring, more importantly, and thank you for your optimism and your honest answer. Andrew, you yourself were challenged on your voting record statistically as a citizen, not as someone voting within the system. You know, not your voting record there, but as a citizen, as being one of those. And you coined it perfectly. You said, yes, I'll admit to being 83% of New Yorkers who don't participate. And I think you owned that very well. So kudos to you. But my question becomes this: with that overwhelming statistic of 83% of people who aren't engaged in the process, who don't feel that their voice matters, how do you deal with the fact that historically, specifically, Black voters, and we saw there was a lot of tension around that idea in this national election. How do you deal with the idea that there are disengaged Black voters that make up a stunning population of New York across all of the boroughs, and who don't feel that they have a voice, or that their vote matters, or that their vote is you know, really being leveraged against their own interest, when the fact is, and this is a fact, is it, if you look at it, it seems like people only care about their issues every 2 to 4 years when they need that vote. So what is it that's going to be different with how you approach the activation of those voters who feel that they don't play for any stakes?
Well, I think that's one thing I bring to the table, Roberto, is that for me, like I'm operating with different deliverables than I think traditional Democratic candidates might. Starting with cash, you know, it's like I think I may be the first candidate just walk around being like, hey, I think we should just put $1 billion into the hands of folks who are like in extreme need. And you know, unfortunately, the reality is a disproportionate number of those people would be Black. You know, I mean that's the way not just the city but the country works. So I think some degree of independence from what has gone before is actually attractive to some of the people you're describing. Like some of the people that have checked out of the system and been like, oh, like doesn't matter what's going on. These people don't actually do anything in my community. And I actually heard that multiple times in Brownsville. You know, when I was there, they'd be like, it doesn't matter. Like, you know, that like this project will still be neglected and the rest of it. And when I hear that, I think to myself, like this person is just speaking from experience. You know what I mean? You know, so like can't argue with it. But like they're just seeing, you know, the problems get worse. So I think if you're that kind of voter, you'd actually may be very attracted to an Andrew Yang. I will confess to you all something. I am much, much more concerned about trying to do this job at a high enough level to get the city back on its feet than I am about winning this job. You know what I mean? Like that's where my head is right now. Like I'm just, like I'm trying to figure out, Roberto, how I can actually follow through for that person.
I believe that, and I see that in the way that you carry yourself. I see somebody who's compassionate and who cares and who puts the problems and the people first, and that you'd rather attack problems than attack other people. You'd rather attack the problems that people in New York and all over the country are facing than, attack your political opponents. And I respect you for that, and I tip my hat to you.
Oh, thank you. You know, someone said something to me today, and this is someone who's worked in New York City politics for a little bit. He said that, Andrew, if you win this race, you have the chance to potentially transform New York City politics. And I dare say that there would be a lot of people who would like to see a transformation of New York City politics right now, because there is so much insideriness to the considerations. And we're talking about like insiders upon insiders, like insiders upon insiders are getting voted on by like a very small fraction of the electorate. And so if you expand the number of folks who are interested in this election, and the reality is I think turnout's going to be sky high this time because everyone sees how important this one's going to be. Yeah, so I feel good on that level. I feel good about how bad things are. Unfortunately, it's like because I don't feel good about how bad things are. I mean, I'm just saying, like because of how bad things are, I think people are going to be very activated.
Well, Andrew, I guess it's down to you and me. So first of all, let me congratulate you and give you your clout card for finally being somebody that can, it's worth attacking finally.
I know it's true, Roberto. It's like, yes, upside for
yeah. Oh,
that's
wow.
funny.
Yeah, I'm actually worth attacking. Like, so it means I'm doing something right. With that in mind, all joking aside, because we're having fun here, the serious question I think that's on everybody's mind as we end the evening is, can you tell us some more details around the idea of the New York Basic Income Project and how this, fits into the grand plan, so to speak, of mainstreaming basic income with New York? If you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. And also, like, this is, a somewhat unfair dual question. It's like, I mean, is that part of the plan for a post-pandemic New York? What's the plan for a post-pandemic New York? What's the funding mechanism for New York's basic income?
Oh, thank you. It's a tremendous question. I had a blast with you all. It's great to be able to convene with people that I grew to become friends with over the last number of months. I will say, for folks who are new to this campaign, we would love for you to be part of it. And the best way for you to be part of it is just to donate $10 at yangfornewyork.com, or I think it's like Y4NY also goes there. Also, AndrewYang.com goes there. I should be able to just start saying that. But if you donate $10 to the campaign, that's immensely helpful. And then you'll become this insider and we'll send you all the fun updates. I am so pumped to have the basic income in New York City at a bigger scale than is true in any other city in the country. And I went through the budget and became confident that we could free up $1 billion, and also that $1 billion would pay itself back in many ways. And the most direct way is that when someone is on the streets of New York City typically spends tens of thousands of dollars per person in different ways. And so if you can keep someone in a better situation, you'll actually save some of that money. I also want to try and find private philanthropic dollars to augment the $1 billion. Like the $1 billion, I believe we can fund publicly, but I want to try and get another $1 billion. And I think it'd be a pretty good pitch to philanthropists, some of whom are already spending money on either anti-poverty work or New York City, and say, look, how would you like to help alleviate poverty in New York City? This will be great. You can hang out with the mayor. We'll have a press conference. Everyone will love you, like that'll be all. So I'm going to try and leverage it in various ways. But I think having basic income in New York City is going to be a very, very powerful example for others, because I think New York City is still the leading light in many respects. It's such like a massive part of who we are as a country, that if New York City has a basic income, I'm looking forward to joining Mayors for a Guaranteed Income. That organization? It'd be so fun. Andrew Yang is gonna like join that thing if they'll have me. I'm sure they'll have me. I'm friends with some of them.
Is the $1 billion year one, or would it be over your tenure over a period of time?
It's per year, Roberto. We're gonna try and make that thing happen. And then I've got like a few plans on generating revenue in different ways. So that they're like, you have to do a few things at once, unfortunately. So of the major measures to generate revenue, one I've talked about openly that I'll just share here again is that property tax is the most durable source of revenue for New York City. There are major property owners in New York City that are tax exempt and are thus not paying property tax. And they're benefiting from police and fire department protection. The most blatant and egregious example is Madison Square Garden right now is a tax abatement that's worth $40 million a year. And Madison Square Garden does not need a tax break. Like it's like a multi-billion-dollar organization. And the joke was like when this was going to sunset, they threatened to move, and that really literally made me laugh out loud. I was like, "What, are you going to move the Knicks? Like where? Like what are you even talking about? Yeah. Like your entire thing is your location. Are you like So it made me laugh. So there are ways that we can get some revenue back and start trying to pay for this. I'm excited to disclose the second and third sources of revenue that we're looking at, and I hope that like we come up with new plans. What's been interesting is that to have a meaningful source of revenue, an $85 billion budget, like it needs to be in the tens or hundreds of millions of dollars. So like that's like the mission we're on, is find other opportunities that will not frankly like impede the comeback, because there are a lot of organizations and people that right now are trying to figure out whether New York City is going to be where they're going to keep their company or home or whatever it is.
Hospitality being a major part of that, the hospitality industry being crushed, a lot of the food services industry. So I know you're very passionate about small business. I know that that's what Venture for America was all about. People may forget you were a champion of change. You helped build small businesses and entrepreneurship all across this country once upon a time. And I think that bringing that to the crown jewel of America, to New York City, can only be a good thing. I think that it's still, like it was for my family, represents to many people opportunity.